Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webcast about bridging the gap from security awareness training to human risk management. My name is Kristen Zurovich, and I'll be moderating today's session. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. First of all, we have Bret Fund with us. Bret is the Senior VP and General Manager of Infosec. Welcome, Bret.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we also have Theo Nasser, who is the CEO and co-founder of Right Hand Cybersecurity. Glad to have you with us, Theo.
Thank you, Kristen. Great to be here.
Okay, I'm going to quickly set the stage for today's conversation. As we know, many organizations are starting to think what I would say more critically about cybersecurity risk and probably more importantly, the potential impact of that risk that it may have on their business, their performance, maybe even their brand reputation. And we're seeing a corresponding shift in how they're rethinking the way they assess and manage the human risk element of that, which I think we've all seen. It's the biggest cyber risk contributor to security incidents, to the breaches, somewhere around 68% right now. So it's not insignificant. So today, Bret and Theo are going to be sharing their insights and discussing, first of all, what human risk management is, why it matters most right now, how it can actually strengthen your current security awareness and training program, and then how human risk management can really unify the security training and the security operations sides of your organizations. And hopefully we'll have some time to close at the end, gentlemen, with some recommendations you have to help folks get started. So I'd like to start with an interesting finding. For years, security awareness and training programs have been the cornerstone to addressing human risk. That's not new. Gartner, in fact, estimates that more than 90% of cybersecurity functions already have an awareness program in place. I'm sure most of you or all of you who are attending today have one in place. But what we're also seeing right now, and probably you've experienced this, is that we're seeing this, what I would call a plateauing of security awareness effectiveness. And on this front, Gartner found that in organizations that actually have an awareness program in place, 69% of employees admitted to intentionally bypassing their organization's cybersecurity guidance. I don't know about you, but I find that astounding. So, what can you do about this? That's really what we're going to dive into now. And I'm really looking at what's driving this decline in security awareness effective, how you can strengthen employee security behaviors by bridging that gap to human risk management. I'd like to start, Bret and Theo. I'm really interested in your reactions to stats like this. What's been happening over the past few years that's making security awareness training alone insufficient? Or maybe if I'd even ask it differently, what's driving this shift toward human risk management?
Yeah, I'm happy to start off, and then also eager to hear what Theo has to say. When I look at the first stat, Kristen, I think that isn't very surprising, right? It speaks to the fact that threat actors have increasingly been targeting human behaviors as sort of the weak link in security. And I think we all know that security awareness and training programs really came online to help combat that through awareness, especially for those who aren't really skilled in the arts of security. But the second part is, this idea that the employees are actually circumventing what they know shows that why I think security awareness and training alone won't produce long-term effectiveness. And I think it's because we rested on this assumption that if somebody knows something, that they'll just naturally do the right thing. And for me, I think about this as it relates to, for many of us, probably most of us, if not all of us, have gone to driver's ed and we took education to learn what the rules of the road are. And our likely compliance of those rules of the road wanes. And we don't always follow what we know. We actually circumvent what we know to accomplish some sort of goal that we might have while we're on the road, right? So I think actually in the end, to solve this problem, we need to build a better culture of security where it's not just about awareness that people know what to do, but that they feel accountable and want to be part of the solution and not see the solution as something that's stopping them or preventing them from doing something that they feel like they need to do to get things done. I think that's what I think about when I see that 69% as it relates to security awareness and how human risk management, I think, will actually come in and help provide a better culture for us. So,
Yeah,
Theo?
I'm interested in your take on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Brett said. But it kind of comes back to this concept that, while everyone here on today's call, we're all extremely passionate about security. Some of us have been doing security for years, if not decades. 99.9% of the organizations that we work with don't have that same level of passion or care about security. And so when I see statistics about people intentionally bypassing security measures, well, all that means to me is that they're just trying to do their job. So if you take a sales professional, an HR professional, or a marketing professional, and they have a job description, a core responsibility of what they need to get done to be successful in their job, that's their North Star. That's what they're focused on. So, to me, the shift from maybe traditional security awareness to human risk management is really keeping that notion, I think, top of mind. It's understanding what is it that users care about? How do we achieve our security objectives while still allowing our workforce and employees to achieve their daily work objectives? And how can we make that coexist? So, that I think is really where human risk management is going and one of the advantages of human risk management.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's that psychological shift within the organization. I know we keep throwing out the term human risk management. Everyone came to the webinar today to hear about how do I get to that. Well, let's maybe just step back for a moment and talk about what human risk management actually is. Maybe to put it into context, maybe you can compare it to see how it differs from traditional security awareness and training programs that folks are running right now.
I'm happy to take the first stab at that. The concept of human risk management, the way that I define it and the way that we define it at Right Hand, is being able to focus on monitoring, measuring, and mitigating risks associated with real world human beings. So when you look at ways to monitor, measure, and mitigate human risk, and you kind of start with that first piece of monitoring, it's really just about visibility. Traditional security awareness training has provided visibility historically into phishing simulation performance or security awareness training performance. And when we talk about visibility into human risk management, it's about expanding what an organization, what a security team gains visibility into. So with human risk management, it's about using the real world data and alert logs that an organization receives through some type of integration. So it can be an integration with a SIM solution, if that's where all products are pointed towards. That could be an integration with an email security solution, an endpoint solution, a DLP solution. And by ingesting the various security alerts from those tools, you now have insights into real world behaviors of your employees. And so being able to gain that type of visibility allows an organization or a training team, a security awareness team, to tailor the different types of interventions or trainings or nudges to users based on all of the real world risks and threats being exhibited by the workforce population. And so that's how we look at human risk management. It's really about expanding the visibility of the different types of user behaviors, focused just on a simulated behavior from a phishing simulation.
So essentially what I'm hearing you say though then is that these integrations are really key or foundational to making this shift toward human risk management. I'm wondering if you can maybe elaborate or provide an example, like an end-to-end example of a scenario that an organization may have. What is actually triggering that? What in the integration stack is being triggered to actually result in what we see on the end for, the communication to the employee? And maybe if you can sort of provide a little bit more detail about what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah. I'm happy to share an example of a use case. So,
Mhm.
it's a risk that is really important to an organization is data exfiltration or data handling for an employee workforce population. What an organization might do if they're doing security awareness training is take security, safe data handling best practices, launch maybe an October Cyber Awareness Month training campaign, and train all in the workforce on safe data handling and safe data best practices. With human risk management, instead of just having it be a brushstroke, one size fit all, everyone receives training and they need to brute force their way through the quiz to be marked as compliant, With human risk management, the idea would be to integrate with a DLP solution. And so if I'm an employee that is in violation of a DLP policy and I take right-hand cybersecurity corporate information and I forward that to my personal Gmail address, maybe that triggers a violation or an alert into a DLP solution or into a security technology. Through a human risk management integration, you can now gain visibility as a security team when a user does that. And your DLP tool already tells you when that happens, right? That's the purpose and the point of the DLP tool. But what human risk management allows is training that user when they make that mistake, coaching that user when they make that mistake. So in theory, through a real-time intervention to educate the user about the do's and don'ts of safe data handling, we can prevent that user from doing it again in the future.
Sure. And what kind of education are we talking about in a human risk management scenario? Is it the same type of education someone would receive in a security awareness program, or is it slightly different?
Well, you kind of think about the user use case, or at least this is how we think about it, is, the user is doing their job. They are maybe trying to find a way to interact and communicate with, or maybe they are trying to communicate with a third-party supplier or vendor, right? And they make some type of mistake unknowingly and have now triggered an alert in a DLP tool or some type of security alert. Instead of, putting that person who's very busy, right, trying to complete a task, instead of putting them through maybe what a traditional security awareness module looks like, which could be a longer video, maybe followed by a quiz, maybe a security awareness module can take anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20. I've seen hour-long training modules are being executed by organizations before. The idea with these real-time interventions is to make them really bite-sized. It's very focused on what was observed and how you can mitigate that risk in the future. So it might be text-based, maybe a very short redirection to a policy, a reminder about a policy that exists around safe data handling. But the intention is it's supposed to be in the moment, very hyper-focused on the behavior that was observed, and it should not consume a lot of time.
Perfect. Love that. Um, Brett, you know me. I like data. I like stats. I'm going to bring this up. I'd like you maybe to react to this. We certainly know that it often takes longer to identify and contain a breach that's started by the human element. Like some of the examples that we're actually seeing on this slide, where the life cycle from, mean time to identify and mean time to actually correct or close that cycle could be more than 200 days, according to IBM. This also means that these types of breaches, the human factor breaches, are going to be more costly simply because they're taking more time. I'd like maybe if you could talk a little bit about how a human risk management approach could help reduce this time and the corresponding cost, and maybe even the impact to the SOC as well.
I'm happy to. And one, really appreciated how Theo described sort of what it is, as well as some examples of how it's used for fun. And I think for me, that one of the big promises here in the way that we can reduce time is by having all of the employees take a more educated approach, right? And I think that's what we were trying to do with security awareness and training, help people understand so they didn't do. But like, as I was talking about, just because people understand something doesn't mean that they always do. But building this culture of empowerment, this culture of accountability, where people take a more active role in their security behaviors, will allow us to reduce the threats that actually do exist from the human element, thereby kind of reducing the amount of cost that an organization would be exposed to. And like for me, again, not to go too far with the analogy, but to double down on the driving analogy, I think about the fact that sort of my family uses Life 360. And so one, it's really great looking at, how my kids are driving and where they might need some education, some nudges, if you will, whether that's a text, whether that's a talk, right? It's a very similar thing. But I'll be honest, I also look at times and look at my own stats and go, oh, wow, I can't believe I picked up my phone 3 times while I was driving here, right? And maybe that's something I need to think about. Or actually, I did a really good job. And so I think that's to me the promise of HRM. It's just trying to help promote accountability and empowerment, whereas people understand their behaviors, how their behaviors impact an organization and potential cost to an organization. They're more willing to self-regulate rather than assuming that security team's trying to block me out again or shut me down, or it's more of a partnership than something to steer away from. So,
Absolutely. And I do like you bringing back that analogy because I think I can relate to that as well, having had kids and myself in that scenario.
I definitely agree with Brett's point about helping promote and enable self-regulation for users. If we can change the paradigm where users feel security awareness training is a chore, rather their contributions to the security program is actually for their own personal benefit and that of the organization. That's really everyone's objective here. No security team wants to create friction with their users. And so the idea of human risk management is trying to break down that wall and remove that friction layer. That's how we look at it kind of with the sentiment to the user. I think there's also a very important element to look at this as it pertains to the internal security team as well. With most security awareness training being really focused on maybe like the GRC side of a CISO's organization, right? Really focused on the training side. One of the values that I think can really be brought to life here with human risk management is a closer collaboration between that GRC team and the security operations team. The most effective security awareness programs that I've seen are where there is a very close intersection and a very close bond between those organizations where they're communicating with one another and they're sharing intelligence with what each business or each team is seeing to help make the other side more successful. This is easier said than done, right? Because you have the security operations team, their job is alert triage and alert investigation, and they're fighting fires every single day. I've never met an overstaffed security operations team, and all of them are also overburdened with just an inundation of alerts. And so being able to kind of ease that process between a GRC team and a security operations team, I find is very valuable and something very top of mind for a lot of security leaders and CISOs that we talk to. And so providing some type of pane of glass that can provide insights to both sides, I think is extremely valuable. And then when you talk about things like, breach life cycles being longer, I know a statistic that during my time at FireEye Mandiant, one of the statistics that Mandiant coined was dwell time, which was the time from when a breach occurred until the actual breach was discovered. So how long what was the victim being breached without they were being breached? Kind of connecting the security operations team with your GRC team, the goal here is that we're actually able to reduce those life cycles, reduce those dwell times, because you can implement a much more proactive measure for security by training people on what they need to be trained on, the actual intelligence of what the SOC sees. And that's a very powerful statement to be able to put into practice.
Yeah, I'd love that. I think that's one of the benefits that we often overlook because historically, security awareness and training programs have been so focused on educating the employee or the end learner sitting at their desk. It overlooks what's actually happening in the SOC and the stress and the burden that SOC is currently under. So that's great. You did bring up CISOs, which I'm interested as organizations analyze the role and the impact that human risk management may have. What differences do you think a CISO or maybe even a board level executive could expect from having this type of solution in place? And I'll throw this up as a jump ball to either of you.
I'm happy to start. And then, yes, Theo, again, love to hear your perspective. But I do think, like, as Theo described that, right? Not only do you get some benefits from more security operations, which has taken a more technical uh, focus in their efforts, and then the training and compliance piece, which has been more focused on the training and working with individuals. you see those teams start to come together. So as a CISO, like that's important to see teams aligning around goals, purpose, but also tools in the way that they accomplish their work. It also empowers, as a result of that, the CISO to not one, feel like you've got two different sort of tools or teams you're working with to accomplish your goals, but you've got a more united effort, and that you're bringing those two together, that you're using these tools to provide information and understanding on where the real challenges and threats are in your organization, not trying to say the human element is a threat, but it is part of the threat landscape. But then also figuring out how do you go and not provide just training you don't know where it goes, but actual in time, real time nudges or training to help move that individual to help them maybe not make sort of those same errors or even prevent those errors more quickly. So what that to me again comes back to this idea that you can start to really influence culture in a way that I don't think we could have as well or as easily before. So for a CISO, I believe this is very empowering and giving them sort of an integration of tools that might in the past have looked more separate from their vantage point.
And I would add on to that by saying I think it provides a very clear metric on behavior change. We all talk about being in this industry, security awareness, human risk management. We all talk about behavior change. The measurement of behavior change has historically been limited. The measurement of behavior change has been, my click rate for my phishing simulations went from 18% to 15% to 12%. And now I've broken single digits. I'm at 8%. And, trying to continue to drive that downwards. And while it's important and relevant, and I know there's a lot of compliance certifications and regulations associated with security awareness training and phishing simulations. So I'm not trying to make it sound like that's not very important. It is. When calculating and measuring behavior change, there is so much more to measure there. And so when we talk about adding value to, a CISO, a CISO's KPIs or what a CISO cares about, or even a board, it's being able to actually illustrate proof and a return on investment of what that behavior change is. And the way that we like to correlate it is to a reduction in actual security alert volume, which Bret alluded to. It's this concept of being able to say, if you are properly coaching and educating people, they should be doing less bad behavior and more good behavior. That is proof that it's working. And so that can be correlated into the alert volume that the Security Operations Center sees. If you are seeing an employee continuously violating that DLP policy, the use case that we were talking about earlier, where they're exfiltrating corporate information to a personal Gmail address, and by changing their behavior, by nudging them in the moment when they make those mistakes, that user or those group of users are no longer doing that same thing. That is proof that it's working. And that is a tangible value add that a security team can measure. You can quantify that reduction in security alert, and you can see the domino effect, the positive domino effect that it has for the rest of the security team with the reduction of inundation of alerts and just the reduction of alert volume in general.
Good point. Maybe if I could switch gears and look at the other end of the spectrum, as an organization is, again, maturing from security awareness to human risk management, what other changes can employees expect to experience as part of this transition? Or is there anything that they should expect to experience?
Yeah, I was just going to say more time to focus on what they care about. This concept of human risk management is about breaking down the wall and the barrier, or the training fatigue that can exist with security awareness training. Employees can expect more time, right? If they're getting nudged with a 10-second notification about what to do right the next time, the do's and the don'ts of best practices with security, that's a win in their eyes compared to maybe doing a 10-minute or a 30-minute training module. And then the other, I think, win for employees too, and I guess this would equally be a win for a security team, but it's helping educate and train them where they are and where they work. This concept of human risk management is most effective when it's being delivered. This nudge is being delivered through a communication medium like a Slack or a Microsoft Teams. It doesn't need to be, log into this learning management system, go through 3 levels of configuration to consume a module, take 30 minutes to consume the module, submit it, and then make sure that it's compliant. This is just a pop-up in the browser in some cases, in your Microsoft Teams, in your Slack, providing a really low barrier to train, really low barrier to change behavior. I think that that's a huge win for employees because once again, going back to your first point, Kristen, people are purposely bypassing these things. People are purposely bypassing security. So how can you reduce that friction to kind of weave it into their day-to-day job? If you can do that successfully, it's a win for everyone involved.
Yeah. And I think for me, the opportunity for continuous learning and feedback is helpful and should be seen as helpful to employees. The sort of saying goes, repetition is the mother of learning. The problem is like repetition once a year probably isn't enough, right? But if in the moments I'm getting these alerts and I go, oh, shoot, I just did that same thing last month. I know better than this. Then you start to really you start to learn better and iterate your behavior. It's sort of like the employee feels like they don't have to remember everything, but at the same time, as they practice and get better and better and better, as Theo was talking about, those alerts go down because the employee self-regulates and they do it on their own. And I think that notion of this continuous learning and feedback in a positive way should feel very empowering to the employees as well.
And the thing I like about that too is because it is so much more engaging to how they're doing their day-to-day work, they're more receptive to the message, but being more receptive to that message and having it stick is something that they can take into their personal lives as well. It's not just things that you're learning at work to keep your company data safe, but it's things that you can actually take into your personal life. You can take and share it with your children. You can share it with your mother-in-law or whoever needs, those kind of reminders as well. I think keeping it top of mind like that through that very quick hit, nudgy style reminder is something that will hopefully bleed into other areas of their life as well. So I'm looking at our time, and we're doing good on time, folks. But I do want to give both Bret and Theo a moment to share any advice that you folks may or that you guys might have for anyone here on this webcast starting to explore human risk management as that next level of maturity for their program. What would you share? Any recommendations on next steps or how they can get started in this transition?
Yeah, I'll start, Theo, if that's all right. I think a couple things. One, if you're looking to make this shift, this should be, something very positive and promoting, and you should promote. Look, we're going to make this shift to improve all of our security sort of culture approach and the organization, but make sure that the employees understand how this will help them, as Theo's been talking about, give them more time to do their job and actually help them be better able to do their job securely. But I also want to I would say to the security teams, is this is a journey. It's not a destination. It's not just about getting a tool in there and then all of a sudden everything is taken care of, right? I think just as helpful as those alerts and nudges can be, a security team also needs to exercise judgment to see how much alerts and nudges they're sending along to employees to make it productive. Because I think we all understand if you send too much, that sometimes can feel overwhelming. So what do you want to focus on? What are the key things you want to measure? Where do you want to improve? And then recognize this is a journey, so you don't have to get to the end at the very beginning. It's about iteration and helping the culture of the company come together over time rather than assuming in 3 months.
And I would say if I'm speaking to a security awareness manager, someone who's overseeing a security awareness program, advice I would give, and I'm going to take this really tactical, is start a conversation if you haven't already with whoever is working in your security operations center, if it's in-source or if it's outsourced, maybe you're working with a third-party MDR provider, MSSP, and just take the time, if you haven't already, to understand what are the alerts that SOC team or that MDR provider understand what are the alerts that are being triaged and investigated, and then understand the volume for each type of alert that is being triaged and investigated. And do what you can to correlate those alerts that are being triaged and investigated by the SOC to a type of behavior. And while it's nice to have all of this on, and just having that conversation with someone who's looking after the security operations centers or threat intelligence within an organization, it can give you a very clear vantage point into understanding the specific risks that your organization faces. And with that wealth of knowledge, right off the bat, you have just leveled up tenfold what your security awareness and training program will be. You will be tailoring content to those risks and behaviors. You will be able to tailor the messaging to those risks and behaviors. And you will be building very close alliances and friendships with those people in the SOC because they will see you taking the effort to help change behavior and train the workforce population to make their job easier. So, it's very tactical advice, but just working in closer collaboration with the security operations team will add tremendous benefit to a GRC leader or a security awareness manager in rolling out their program.
Fantastic. Yeah, some really, really good insights, gentlemen. We do have time for some questions. We have some questions actually coming into the queue here. I would encourage anyone that has a question that hasn't submitted it yet, go ahead and do that now. But I'm going to start it out with a question that Ricardo, he asks, can you talk more about the role of analytics in human risk management and how security leaders like us can keep up with them?
The role of analytics, sure, I'm happy to take the first stab there. The role of analytics in a human risk management platform and how security leaders can keep up with it. Well, I think from an analytics perspective, the first thing is being able to actually attribute a alert to a behavior. So when we talk about the role of analytics in human risk management, what we're trying to understand is how many alerts are being generated by employees. How can you actually take a single employee or a department or a group or a smart group or some type of segment of the business and create a profile, some type of risk profile? How can you understand if a certain department is exhibiting one type of security risk, or maybe it's a certain individual, and then being able to correlate that into a change over time? So the way that I look at analytics for human risk management, it's visibility into the actual alert or behavior that is being exhibited. And then it's mapping that over a period of time to detect, is that alert or is that behavior changing? Are we seeing more of it, which would be bad, that'd be going the wrong direction? Or are we seeing less of it, which is proof that behavior is actually changing because people are making fewer mistakes? And then once you have that mapped out from an analytical perspective, it's really powerful to be able to kind of double click in to find out the different waves or the heat maps of where the risk is. Is it happening within a specific division of the business? Is it happening within a specific department of the business? And that can give you more visibility in how to tactically drive.
Yeah, I mean, don't have a lot to add here, but what I would say is I do think the approach that Theo outlined is the right one, right? Which is you can get overwhelmed with all the different types of analytics and ways in which we would need to guard against security threats, but it's about getting sort of a geography of what's happening in your org and having that the analytics sort of give you at least some of that geography and then prioritizing. And that's where it's not about solving all the problems at once. It's about taking things in steps. And I think by getting the geography, then it allows you to figure out the right path to get to the destination that you're headed.
Sure. So, question just came in from Daniel, and this might be a little bit more on the technical or tactical side as well, but I'm hoping I'm interpreting his question correctly. He's asking if there would be any tools or techniques to look at that will assist with human risk management in security awareness that would be recommended. So, I think what Daniel is asking is, are there particular tools within the SOC or within the existing security tech stack that would be recommended as kind of good feeders of behavioral data into a security or into a human risk platform. Daniel, if I did not get that right, please send in a follow-up question, but maybe Theo, you want to take that one?
Sure. The first step, Daniel, would be to look at the actual tools that are already deployed into your environment. So if you want to look at email risk or how users interact with email, whether that be phishing, you would look at your email provider, right? So maybe you're using an email security tool. I've given the example of DLP. So see if your organization is currently deployed a DLP provider. Maybe it's an endpoint solution, or maybe all of these products are being directed into a SIM. So maybe the tool that you really need to look at to assist with your human risk management program, Daniel, is the SIM. Maybe that's what makes the most sense because that's already aggregating all of the alerts for your security operations center. So I would say that the best thing to do here would be to speak with whoever oversees those security technologies and those security products. Ask them, which tools do we rely on our perimeter to generate alerts? And then if you can just either gain direct visibility or ask and seek visibility into what those alerts are, I think that would be a great first step and really probably lead to a whole series of things that you can really tap into to understand how you can build your program most successfully.
Thanks, Theo. And then one other question that came in from Maureen. Maureen is wondering, as an organization evolves or moves to human risk management, do you expect the roles of security awareness program managers or officers, or even CISOs to change or evolve as well? And if so, what should we expect or plan for?
I mean, that's a great question. I would say I don't know that they transform fundamentally. Rather, what they do um, is um, they're able to use some of this data to think through what are the most effective ways to help individuals learn and be part of that like security first culture, right? And so I think it just allows them to do more efficiently, but I don't know that that fundamentally changes sort of their roles beyond having some better data, and then they can be more creative in the ways that they go about helping individuals learn and continue to get feedback on their behaviors.
Yeah, well, I interpreted this so change of rules for a CISO. Most security rules, as they adapt, it's based on an adaptation of what they're seeing in the threat landscape, right? They're changing their roles to kind of make sure that they're staying one step ahead. With human risk management, I think it just provides a security team with more visibility to be more proactive, right? I think security awareness training has always been, we've got to comply with SOC 2. We've got to comply with ISO 27001. We have this GDPR requirement. We have to do annual attestations. And all of that has driven a lot of security awareness behavior. That's not changing. I mean, all of those things still exist today. But where I do think that a shift is being created is, how can we actually proactively build a more tailored program to the behaviors and risks that we see within our organization. And I think that allows a security leader's role to adapt because they have more data to work with. They have more intelligence to work with. And that's going to hopefully then make them and their teams more successful.
Wonderful. Those are the questions we have today. So I want to thank both of you, Bret, Theo, for your time today, for your insights. I trust this has been valuable for all of you folks that chose to tune in today. Know that you will also receive an email with a link to the recording of this webinar. So if there's someone else in your organization that would benefit from this, please forward that on to them. But until the next time, we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar with us. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you.